I don't really know if I'm going to stick to it very much at all. In fact, a couple weeks ago, and I'm jumping forward in time, and we'll go backwards in time too. Oh, that's what's been going on. I was down in Chicago at the National something trade show. It was all about coffee, actually, coffee in offices, and it was we were there to kind of inaugurate a new relationship that we have. And the gentleman who's the global president of this organization that we just hooked up with was saying he was presenting this idea for his drinks business to the people that owned his company, and he said, "Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to create this brand of tea, and we're going to borrow this brand of chocolate from inside our own company, and we're going to buy this coffee brand, and that's how we're going to relaunch this whole drinks business that we're in." And the family members looked at him and said, "Well, if that doesn't work, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I've only got plan A, I don't have plan B, and if plan A doesn't work, I'm stuffed. So we're going to go with plan A." And today, I'm going with plan A, and if plan A doesn't work, I'm kind of stuffed, so we'll just move on from there. As I said, we started back in 1993. I've got some list of questions over here I'm supposed to respond to, and I'll hopefully touch on one or two of those. All I can tell you is back in 1993, when I was 27 years old, the only thing I knew was that I could do anything, and that the secret to our success back then was a complete confidence, total hubris, and inability to think that we couldn't do something. And that, although that can come back and bite you in the backside, I can tell you that was a huge asset in our favor as we started our company. The other thing that really was a secret weapon for me is the fact that I've got two partners. You can see me on the upper left, but although this can also kill other organizations, especially when you realize that one of your partners is your brother, it has actually been a huge asset for us as we've gone along, because there's always been one person that is not too tired to make the right decision. And many times we've been struggling and trying to push the company forward, and I was ready to give up, but one of my partners was not. So that was a huge asset for us as we went along. But Altera now, as was mentioned, 1993 we started. The whole concept for the company at that time was simply to have a cafe, or at least that was the entire concept in my 27-year-old brain. Fortunately, one of my other partners, the one in the middle, Paul Miller, I think he had a little bit more vision, so he could see beyond the single cafe that we were going to operate in the Bayshore Mall. But as we were creating the cafe in the Bayshore Mall, we bought the espresso machine, and we bought a coffee roaster because we thought it would be a really good idea to roast coffee in that cafe. And we started acquiring other equipment. We actually piled all that equipment into our wood shop, because back then it was not Altera Coffee, it was actually Fowler Audio. We were manufacturing high-performance home audio loudspeakers. And this, remember the hubris part, we put the coffee roaster in next to the drill press and kind of down the aisle from the table saw, and there's a significant amount of sawdust and a piled up wool carpet pad in the back where the dog slept, and we would actually roast coffee up there, unbeknownst to the owners of the building, because we were in the 5th floor of a very large building which housed lots of people, and we were a significant fire hazard. But back then we were, and remember the hubris part, we were so enthusiastic about what we were doing. We were absolutely blinded to really the conditions with which we were roasting coffee and presenting. And I actually, because we weren't making any money. We weren't making any money building loudspeakers, that's for sure. And we weren't making any money roasting coffee at that point, so we were working outside jobs. I was bartending down on Water Street. My brother Ward was waiting tables at Elsa's, where some of you people may have had a drink or a hamburger. And we said, we should sell coffee to Elsa's. So we said, Carl Kopp, please come and check out our coffee. And we actually had Carl come and travel up the 5 floors in the freight elevator and walk down the hall and come into our wood shop and said, Carl, look, coffee roaster, man, and coffee. And we're like, don't touch the table saw because you're going to walk out with sawdust on your back. But we were completely oblivious to the fact that this was a completely inappropriate thing to do. But oddly, Carl liked it and has been a customer ever since. So, secret weapon number 1 is a level of hubris and confidence that you can do it, because, quite frankly, looking at the kind of down the barrel of opening a business, you would be crazy to think you could do it, because it's a stupendous challenge. It's not an easy thing to get done. So we finally got smart and realized the city health code was not going to let us roast coffee in a wood shop, so we moved the coffee roasting operation down to a basement space, which was basically its one redeeming characteristic was it was really cheap. But so we were roasting coffee down to the Allen Bradley Clock Tower. In the meantime, the Bayshore Cafe opens. And then finally, we stumble onto this building on Prospect Avenue, which I hope some of you have been to, which served as our roasting plant and our kind of flagship cafe for about 12 years. This facility and kind of this move was big for us, as anybody that's kind of grown with an organization or grown an organization knows there are kind of growth curves and then plateaus and then whole new curves that you go up again. You transition from one thing to the next to the next. You're always going through these transitions, and this was the first really big transition we went through. It just changed the character of the company. We weren't working in a leaky basement. We actually had an office area and a production area rather than basically everybody knocking into each other doing the same thing down in the basement. So the Prospect Cafe was big structurally for the company, but also it began to build our brand. And I didn't know it at the time. Somebody accused me at the time of having some corporate culture. And I was like, dude, one, we're not a corporation, and I don't think we really have a culture here. But the fact is, we were developing a culture. I didn't know it at the time, but we were making decision after decision after decision after decision that I realized reflected what we felt was significant about running a business. It sounds stupid now, but at the time I didn't realize we were doing this. So, locating in urban areas, locating in dense urban environments with walking communities. You can see actually the Altera bike team there, supporting cycling, renovating historic structures, positioning the cafe in front of the manufacturing space which connects our customers to the work that we do, honoring work, honoring artisanship, creating a facility that is built of materials that are largely recycled, that when you touch and feel them, you know what those materials are. These are not injection molded things prefabricated in a plant in South Carolina, put on a semi-truck and here you go, here's your cafe. Each of these cafes are built individually, and they're each unique. However, there is, of course, a common aesthetic thread flowing through them. But this is where the brand started to be built. And one of these questions I was supposed to answer was, what are the significant things in your business, or what brings value? The brand, the culture, is the thing that is the most valuable commodity. Of course, we have to source great coffee. We have to roast great coffee. My baristas have to be rock stars. But at the end of the day, most people, when they think about Altera, think about my company, they're connecting with the brand, the concept, some fuzzy thing that we've somehow communicated to them. And the Prospect building was the first step there. This whole cultural brand, internal thing started to get a little stronger when we did the Lakefront Cafe. Certainly that's the highest profile facility that we've put together. But when we were contemplating this cafe, like Prospect and like some of our other facilities, we've always tried to, although we're trying to use that common aesthetic, we're also looking at the facility, this facility or the Prospect building, and try to build off its individual character. Prospect was an old warehouse. We were building off of that working environment. The Lakefront Cafe is all about water and water quality and sustainability. So when we were considering the outdoor seating areas, rather than concrete where we could avoid it, it's rotted granite where water can percolate through into the ground rather than go in the sewer systems. The ADA ramp on the lower right encircles in-ground water filtration system that takes the runoff from the parking lot and filters it before it goes into the sewer system. All of the steel that we used inside the building is all recycled. All the wood that we used inside the building is all recycled. All the cabinetry is recycled. All the countertops, actually, we had to pull the floor out of the pump room side, and all the joists were recycled into countertops. They're just, wherever we could, at every location, we tried to drive this theme, this concept of sustainability, the concept of honoring work and the artisanship that goes into these materials wherever you can see it. So this really started to kind of codify in my own mind that wow, we did have some kind of culture, and we certainly had some brand identity. Let's see where we go from here. This is from our Humboldt facility. We just built this a couple of years ago, and it finally kind of brought, I talked about those curves of growth and those plateaus where you transition from one thing to the next. This is a huge transition, one of the most recent for us. This brought together the parts of the company that were previously kind of separate. Well, in those 12 years we were at the Prospect building, we squirreled people away in the basement. They had really crappy office digs down there. They were kind of getting too pale from too much fluorescent light. And we had people across the street in other offices. We had this totally hacked together duct tape bubblegum kind of wireless link between the two buildings to keep the network going. We had a bakery which we launched in this building across the street, which was, I don't know if any of you are familiar with East Side. We got this building which used to house the Salvation Army. It's kind of a, Salvation Army store. And it was years before we would come into work in the morning and there'd be this pile of clothes in front of the door. And it took forever it was incredible. So we've still got a lot of clothes kind of laying around the building. Anyway, so the bakery's across the street. The wireless link is practically broken. I got people in the basement. We're growing. This is wonderful. We're having success, but it's causing problems. So it only took like 3.5 years of active work, but we finally built this building on Humboldt, which got everybody under one roof. And that was a huge watershed event for us. Suddenly there were people in the bakery that I could actually shake their hand and call by name because I actually knew them because they were in the same building I was, rather than living across the street and doing things that I didn't really know what was going on for the bakery. But the Humboldt facility really started to bring us all together as a company. It married up the bakery commissary with the people that were roasting the coffee and producing on the other side, and also produced a whole new cafe that you could come and engage with the work that we do. Somewhere in here, yes, tell us about your most memorable failure on the road to success. The bakery was a complete and utter failure for about 4 years. We thought roasting coffee or kind of building a business was hard. This was hard. We lost a shocking amount of money doing the bakery. Fortunately, I say this jokingly, fortunately we were engaged also in the lakefront project, which was also a shocking amount of money to put that together. So we were getting shocks from both sides, financial shocks. We were spending too much money at the lakefront, and we were losing too much money at the bakery. And it took fully 4 years to get the bakery from losing a lot of money every year to actually starting to break even and go into the black. In fact, it was the year that we were transitioning from red ink to black ink that our accountant sat us down and said, guys, are you going to pick maybe a day or a dollar figure of losses where you're just going to shut the doors on the bakery? He had it about up to here, but we were absolutely convinced that, one, we wanted to control the quality of the product that was coming into the cafes, and two, we knew that, well, I didn't know, but my partner Paul knew, that once we crested about $1 million in sales in the bakery, we were going to flip from being in the red to being in the black, and it was exactly that, about $1 million in sales. Now the bakery is about a $3.5 million organization. This is a neat business for us because it is a separate business in the sense that it has its own financials. It lives kind of on its own. It sells obviously most of its product to our own internal accounts, our own cafes, but it also sells outside. What's most interesting is over the past 2-3 years we've been working in an open book finance platform in the bakery. So the financials are open to all the staff members. They're If you walk into our bakery, there are huge whiteboards up in the bakery with all the financials up on the walls. Each of the staff members has responsibility for one of the lines. So somebody may be responsible for our utility and energy usage. They're responsible for it. In fact, they have to go to the accounting section of our business, get those numbers, and put them up on the board. Somebody's responsible for sales. Somebody's responsible for cost of goods. Somebody's responsible for each of those line items in the financial, and they all get bonused based on the performance of the business. This is very exciting. It's really driven performance to a significant degree, and we're hoping to roll this out more broadly in the company. What's next? Like I said before, you have to have great culture. That's perhaps the most difficult thing to build. And part of building that culture is nurturing a passion for what you do. For us, obviously, it's coffee. For other people, it's different things. But it's not me making the lattes. It's not me doing the business. It's not me connecting with the customers. This is what I do these days. I make bad PowerPoint presentations and talk aimlessly. I really don't contribute specifically to what the business does day to day, and other people, our staff members, are responsible for creating that culture. So that's kind of scary, because no longer am I the guy actually that I can go out there and control that. But quite frankly, these people are much better doing this than I am. I'm not very good at many things, but you just certainly don't want me making your lattes. So we've tried to develop a culture, a cult, if you will, of quality in our organization, and whether that's making the lattes, what we have done is create a core of baristas. They actually compete locally, nationally, and we have yet to go to the world competition, but we hope to someday, of barista excellence. We have, to communicate the passion we have at our wholesale roasting plant out to the cafes, we have created what we call the lightning rod program, so that we have selected enthusiasts at each of the cafes, and they come into kind of HQ Central every week, and we work with them. They work with us to dial in our espresso of the week. They talk about how many grams of ground coffee are going to go in the portafilter, how long the extraction time is, what the temperature of the water is. Really geeky, totally crazy coffee stuff. But there are some total coffee geeks in our organization, and we want that passion to flow out to the cafes. So they come to HQ, we do all that geeky stuff, and then they take that passionate work back out to the cafes. It's been tremendously successful. So internally, we're driving excellence, but that's not always enough. We have the unique opportunity as a very social business. I mean, we are an incredibly social organization. We are a touchstone for people's mornings, sometimes mornings, afternoons, and seemingly evenings. They're there all day. But we connect with our community as part of our business. And part of that connection helps to drive this internal culture. So whether we're sponsoring the Altera mountain bike team, or we're sponsoring the Gypsy Kings or Miss Evera at the Pabst Theater, reaching out into our community and trying to make substantive changes and effects in the community helps to connect us more closely with our customers, hopefully to drive a level of loyalty. Hopefully when our customers think, hey, I got to get a cup of coffee, they're thinking, Starbucks, Altera. When you're making that choice, or Altera, any competitor, maybe it's the connection with the Pabst, maybe it's the connection with the bike team, maybe it's the commitment to renewable energy, maybe it's the recycled materials, maybe it's the local nature, maybe it's one of perhaps 1,000 things that we do, but we want that hook in there somewhere so that we drive that business back to our cash registers. Again, this is all, I realize at the end of the day, this is all somehow back to culture and brand. I mean, all of the things that we do when we're sourcing coffee, critical, but it all relates to internal culture and brand building. Sourcing green coffee, this is an interesting part of our business. It's an international part of our business. It all boils down to delivering a great coffee experience to you guys, though, but it's so much fun to talk about, whether we're cupping. You guys should come check this out sometime. They're slurping and they're spitting, and it's a mess. There's coffee all over the floor. But you know, going through the diligence of sampling literally 50 different coffees from a single origin, 50 Costa Ricans. These guys are whipped by the end of the day, and their palates are just exhausted. But because they got to get through that, because they got like 25 Colombians to do the next day, searching not only at the cupping table but at origin as well for extraordinary coffees is a rigorous business. But it's the work that we do the background work that we do to make what we do special. So it's a whole lot of cupping. We make a lot of efforts at origin. We like to think of our community not only as our internal community or our local community, but we very much participate in the worldwide community and the community of our farmers. So it's not only getting down to origin and finding the farmers that are doing the good work and producing the good coffee, but it's actually creating relationships. Lower left picture, the guy on the right, tall guy, kind of pale, probably because he's indoors too much. George Breger, our green coffee buyer, started with us literally sweeping the floor and has worked his way up in the organization. He's a very talented cupper. He's a very talented relationship person at origin. The woman in front of him, Luis Maria, is a coffee farmer in Colombia. The relationship we have with her and the gentleman in the slide above represents what we're doing in a lot of origins. We're working with these farmers, and these people are at turns both extraordinarily sophisticated people in what they do, but they sometimes, not in the case of Luz, but sometimes don't have a great coffee culture of their own. So part of our challenge in Nicaragua, for example, is to help those farmers develop their own coffee culture. It's interesting because many of them don't have very good cupping skills. They grow coffee, but they don't cup it very well. They grow coffee, but they can't evaluate it very critically. So sometimes it's not that we're bringing technology. What we're doing is perhaps opening a discussion with them and trying to drive the quality of their coffee forwards. So the relationships that we build, and this is not 1 year on, not again, but these are year over year over year relationships where we're working with these people to drive their coffee quality. These are huge things because it's not just quality coffee. That's something we need, but it's also financial return to the farmers. Higher quality coffee drives a much higher market price. So there's an exchange of value, a mutuality, if you will. But that helps us because now we can create, with the help of our internal creative staff, branded coffees that are extraordinary in quality and represent real value to you guys, to the consumer. Thank God, that's the end of my slide program. I really don't like the slides very much, but it does help keep me, at least, from wandering way off track. I guess where I want to go, this has been a weird journey for me. At 27, I didn't know what was up. Like I said, it was a degree of hubris and an overestimation of my own capabilities that kind of got me going. Just getting the business, as we like to say, back then we were like the blip on the radar screen. It was blip, blip. You know, we were kind of there, but we were very close to going blip and just blipping off the radar screen. I mean, it was one day to the next. The finances were not very tight. Oh God, they were very loose. We could have blipped off for any reason. The city health department could have shut us down. There's a whole range of possibilities where we could have just failed. And that requires the hubris and the confidence. But along the way, somewhere along that way, we had a level of stability. We weren't bleeding money out left and right. We had staff members that had skills, and we kind of graduated to the next level somewhere around the time we moved into the Prospect building. And then somewhere farther along the line, it became clear that I was no longer kind of delivering the end value to the customer, that it was my staff members, and we've invested a tremendous amount of resources over the years to drive their capacity so that they could do their jobs really well. All the way along, unbeknownst to me, we're building this brand thing. And then finally, as I become aware of the brand and my staff members get better at what they do, and we're all kind of pulling together as a team, we're starting to use open book finance to really involve people in the financial elements of the business. Now I'm totally aware of what the brand is doing. I'm totally aware that my job needs to be cast in the concept of kind of servant leadership. I don't know who's familiar with that term, but my role is to serve the people that work for us, because ultimately it serves me if I can help them get better at what they do. So kind of looking into the future here, we were just down at the Great Game of Business in St. Louis. 3 of us went down there. I don't know who of you might want to check that book out, Jack Stack, kick-ass story, about lots of elements of how to push small business forward, including open book finance, employee stock ownership plans, phantom equity, all of these good things. We're starting to put these things into place so that Altera can, now my vision hopefully is starting to look forward rather than backwards, and I'm trying to look at this organization in terms of what's going to happen for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and trying to figure out how I can best move off the organizational chart. Not that I'm going to disappear, and not that I want to be irrelevant to the organization, but I do, on the flip side, want to be irrelevant to the organization. I want this thing to be able to have longevity, and it has to have legs and internal creativity, so that it's no longer on my shoulders to be the servant leader, but hopefully it's going to be on other people's shoulders to be the servant leader to move this organization forward. I've all been kind of driving forward in this whole presentation to kind of what just happened, which was a significant event for our company. About 2 years ago, we were approached by the Mars organization. These are the well-known makers of M&Ms and other things. And I didn't know much about the Mars organization back then, but I know a lot now. They have 4 businesses. They're a $30 billion organization. They're privately held. They're actually family owned, which makes for an interesting organization, let me tell you. But they do M&Ms and things like chocolate. They do food, like combos. They do pet care or pet products, which is a huge business. And those 3 businesses, each of them are about, multi-billion dollar segments of their business. And the family and the organization as a whole, they cannot grow those businesses very effectively, certainly not in North America, without running afoul of antitrust. They're just too large. So they're looking at kind of population growth in those sectors. There's a 4th leg of their stool, of their business, which is drinks. And they've been doing that business since the early 1980s. It's kind of like the Apple Newton, I like to think of it. Anybody know the Newton? It was the PDA that Apple introduced in the 80s, way before its time, and totally flopped. And Mars Drinks has been doing single-serve coffee since the early 80s. And it also was before its time. It was actually the brainchild of one of the family members. Single-serve coffee, for those of you that don't know, it's a machine you put in like a capsule or a packet or something and put your cup underneath and push a button, and 20 seconds later you got a cup of coffee. It is by far the fastest growing segment of specialty coffee. Green Mountain Coffee, which is completely run counter-cyclical to the stock market, has been rocketing upwards, all on the back of Keurig, their single-serve coffee business. And the Mars Drinks business would like to grow similarly. But the problem was they didn't have a brand. Here's that word again, brand. So these guys about 2 years ago went brand shopping in the world of specialty coffee, and they talked to lots of different companies. I think it was all North America. It could have been broader than that. They're obviously a worldwide organization, but they talked to a lot of companies, and 2 years ago they knocked on our door and said, hey, we like your brand, we love the coffee, we think you guys, there's some symbiotic relationships here, even though you're a tiny, tiny, tiny little company, and we're the massive Mars organization. They call themselves Mars Men, or the men from Mars. They wanted to buy the company. But I knew, and my partners knew, and I'm compressing the timeline considerably, that if an organization like Mars comes in and purchases the company, they're not interested in the local organization. They're not interested in what I've built as a local company. They're certainly not interested in the bakery commissary. They are marginally interested in the coffee roasting. What they want is the brand. So we said, no, Mars Men, you're going to buy the company and then you're going to dismantle the local organization. Maybe not today, but you will dismantle it over time. So we said, we can't do that. So, again, compressing the timeline, we came back to them and said, we'll license you the brand and we'll consult with you to bring the kind of coffee knowledge that you need to drive your drinks business forward. And they said, talk to the hand, Altera, because we're not going to invest enormous amounts of money in a brand that we don't own. So all parties went back to their respective corners, and over several months they came back to us and said, what we will do though is buy the brand. And you will consult for us and help develop our coffee culture and develop the whole brand and quality and sourcing and roasting expertise that we don't have, but that you do. So we did that about 3-4 weeks ago. So this is all still very fresh, but I tell this because it relates to the thing years ago I didn't realize what value it had. It was the brand. And at the end of the day, when Ward, Paul, and I have considered what the kind of longevity of the company is and what we're going to do with this thing, the concept of a sale is always there, or it has been in the past. But when we thought about what we would sell, my partner Ward always thought we'd sell kind of the wholesale business. And my partner Paul, because he's retail scum, and I mean that in the most favorable way, Paul thought we would sell the retail component. I didn't know anything because I have no vision. But what actually became the saleable commodity, and although it was a very unusual kind of confluence of interests, was the brand. So, just to be clear, we still, as a local organization in Wisconsin and Illinois, run our local operations. The ownership of the company has not changed. We continue to run the bakery commissary. All of our staff members remain employed. There are no management changes. This is really almost a transparent transaction, and it's only the brand and our expertise that has been transferred over to this crazily large and very unusual private company. But that is, now you're all up to date. That's kind of the news as of the moment, and all I can say is I'm pretty excited to participate with these guys. We're actually flying down to Alabama to work with their contract roaster. Some of that's going to flow up to Altera on Wednesday. We're just beginning this relationship, but we're very excited. As I said before, this is, although a significant kind of learning curve, change, plateau, evolution, I'm excited to see how this next phase of the business goes, because it now opens opportunity for me, hopefully as servant leader, to create opportunity for my staff. As part of this announcement, there was a phantom equity plan that was put in place for kind of our senior staff so they can participate in the growth of the company going forward. There's going to be more open book finance so people can more effectively adjust and change what's going on at the company level. At the end of the day, this feeds into our need for longevity for the company, because as these people get more skilled, as these people get more phantom equity rights, as these people become more skilled at reading financials and running the company, that means my job becomes more and more and more off to the side, and suddenly I drop off the organizational chart, and hopefully this thing has its own legs. So that's what I've got. Thanks for having me.